How do you think flexibility and mobility helps in calisthenics? Now, obviously, there's the obvious answer, which is, well, it helps with a press to handstand. But maybe for someone who's like, you know what, I don't even care.
Yeah.
All I want to do is just muscle ups, handstands, and planche, which arguably you don't need any mobility for. How would you say to someone, actually, no, you're wrong, you should be working on?
Yeah.
Say it to us as people that don't really work on
Well, I'll
flexibility and
make some
mobility.
classic calisthenics examples. So the first one, let's start with the muscle up. So normal muscle up, like the strict muscle up, do you need much flexibility? No. It's more like a technical plus momentum and some timing in there, and you're good. Slow muscle up, you start to see some things there. Where you start to see things is in the wrists and in the shoulders. So one thing, a lot of times when I do the slow muscle up, a lot of people ask, how is it so smooth, or how can you do it in the first place? A lot of it is shoulder mobility, in that how far can you get your elbow behind your back? Because the more you get your elbow behind the back, the more you can bring the shoulders in front. Yeah. So you have that nice hollow body positions. And if I don't have a bar with me, but if I can bring my elbow just to here, my hands won't be touching my chest. The bar is really far away from my hands, which makes it a lot more of a powerful move. If I can, though, get my elbows really behind, my hands come first of all into the chest, but they're underneath here, and the shoulders come naturally on top. So just being able to do this range of motion is important for the muscle up, for example. Another one, a big one, toes to bar. So when you see people doing toes to bar, they're either swinging a lot because they don't have that compression ability, or their legs are bent, or it's not a toes to bar, but it looks like shins to bar or knees to bar. And I always say it's toes to bar.
Yeah.
So you should do toes to bar. In toes to bar, hamstring flexibility is just key. You can't get away without it. You see that limitation a lot in calisthenics park. When people are really strong, they lean backwards a lot, but they don't have that, because in theory, the ideal kind of mechanical way to do toes to bar is to be in a pancake upside down. So you want to get lower, not either side, because the moment you go either side, you start breaking it. So yeah, that's a big thing. And then obviously you have handstand stuff. But I'd say probably not as much with front lever and back lever, maybe not even with flag. But apart from those, a lot of it is flexibility. Same with L-sit. Let's say in the L-sit, you see people bending their knees a lot when they can't straighten them fully. That's hamstring flexibility.
How do you think working on mobility also improves mind-muscle connection? Which I would argue for, say, it doesn't help with, you don't need to be that mobile or flexible for front lever, or let's say take planche, for example, because I know planche works hip flexors a lot, especially straddle planche. I'd argue that although you don't need a lot of flexibility and mobility, when you've built that mind-muscle connection, which you undoubtedly will do by working on your mobility, that should help with your overall mind-muscle connection and body tension. I don't know if that's something that you've noticed in when you perform moves.
Yeah. It does a lot. So flexibility is a tricky one, because often it works on ranges of motion that you're not really aware of, or you don't even have control over. So if I'll go into the middle splits, for example, at first when you go into the middle splits, your body is just so against it. It's just pulling in the opposite direction that it's just a forcing move. You can't do it. It's very painful because you don't have that awareness of like relaxing into it, because your body is fighting. It feels like you want to break it. So it's a natural response. But having that awareness, and you build that over time. It's not like suddenly you flip a switch and then boom, it clicks. But having that awareness of, first of all, improved range of motion, basically the idea of the flexibility is that with more flexibility, you're able to better align the angles, the force angles, to make the movement more efficient. Now, what that means, that might mean hip flexors and planche, that might mean hamstring and splits in the handstand, and that might mean, again, hamstrings in L-sit and toes to bar and that kind of stuff.
So, aside from just, I guess, flexibility and mobility for calisthenics, how important do you think it is for just any everyday sort of people? Because this is one thing I try and get across to everyone is you need to have a degree of mobility in your key joints, so the shoulder, especially the shoulders and the hips. I would argue more so in the hips than the shoulders, because obviously the hips take more load. You're going to use them for hopefully the rest of your life. Whereas, you know,
Sat down as well. Yeah, you sat down your whole life, whereas your shoulders, you're kind of, even if you sit in a chair like this, your shoulders are kind of, that's good posture for my shoulders there, whereas your hips tight, squeezes in, internal rotation.
exactly. So I guess here's the two questions: is how important do you think mobility and flexibility is for everyday person, and if it is, how often should they train it?
Yeah, really good question. Also very topical these days with what you said, Sam, that a lot of people sit. So think about this. When you wake up in the morning, what I do in the first place, big stretch. You know, I can feel it. I engage a bit the muscles and do a big stretch, and that instantly makes me feel good. It's because I sat a lot, tension builds up throughout the night. So that's a form of flexibility. Now, obviously, it's not within the practice of flexibility, but that should make you think, why is your body naturally want to do that? Because you're stretching, you know, you're releasing the tension, you're stretching a bit, so you suddenly feel good. Now, what I say is, imagine you can take that to the next level. How good would you feel if you just have a practice that you do regularly? Like that goes to the next level. And the other thing is like sitting and hips. I totally agree. People are, I'm not sure whether, can we curse here?
Yeah.
They're fucked. Like people sit all day, their hips are fucked. People cannot move anymore. It's so bad for your spine. It's so bad for your movement in general. It's just horrible. And I'd say so it is important to have not just so these are like health related things, right? You have hips here, maybe it affects your spine, maybe you have like back pain. And the other part is the mindset of it. So flexibility, more than anything, I'd say, has to be extremely disciplined. You cannot just be like, I'll do this week, then next week I'll skip it, then the other. It's very disciplined. That builds insane amount of willpower to achieve everything you want in life. When I started what I would say, I had various stages in life, but when I started my flexibility journey a couple of years ago, maybe 3, 4 by now, to get to the middle splits, I had to do it every day. And sometimes, you know, you don't always want to do it every day, especially after like the workout, you're tired, you've exhausted all your mental strength already, and you have to do flexibility. That power of being able to do, yes, I will do it, and I have the willpower to do it, that translates into every single aspect of your life. So suddenly you're going to find yourself, well, this maybe it's not very pleasant, but I'll do it because I know it's so good for me. And the friction is less because you've built that this mental muscle that removes the friction of doing things that you find uncomfortable.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's kind of the same for exercise, but I'd argue for flexibility, it's almost that step further because there's kind of, especially initially, there's nothing comfortable about flexibility. Whereas with exercise, even if you force someone who doesn't want to go, pretty quickly on, they'll start to get the dopamine rush. They'll feel good after their first workout. After a stretching session, you'll likely feel irritated because you've probably achieved nothing. Like you want to try and touch your toes, and you've maybe gone from there to there. I know for sure I tend to tense up a lot when I'm stretching. I think it's because I'm quite impatient with it. And I mean, I've done stretching sessions with you, and your method I know is quite different from others. Like, because I'm always asking you, how often should I do this stretch, and how many times a day? And you're just like, look, like, listen to you're someone who comes across as you're very in tune with your body. You kind of naturally know when you need to do each stretch. And I remember you saying that you just do it until your body actually relaxes into it. It's not like, once you do 30 seconds of this stretch, you'll achieve X amount of elongation. It's like, no, you need to calm yourself down and feel the stretch happen. And you say sometimes that can happen in like 30 minutes.
Yeah, so I think, okay, so we've said that stretching is helpful for you and you need to do it for health reasons and for discipline reasons. How do people do it? So that comes into what you said, that it's very irritating. That's where the problem comes in the first place, because most people associate stretching with discomfort and pain. There's going to be a certain level of that, but let me tell you that when you go for stretching, you're not going for a sprint, you're going for a marathon that hopefully lasts for your entire life. You know, you can get flexible within, 30 days if you want, you can, but the idea is that you reap the benefits if you keep stretching for longer time, even though you can already do the splits, you know. So not once you've done the splits, boom, you've completed flexibility or something, you know. You still get a lot of benefits from the routine of it. So the first, I'd say, epiphany in stretching is that it doesn't have to be painful. It is painful because you're forcing it. It doesn't have to be painful. So that comes into how do we actually do stretching. So a lot of the time when people start stretching, what do they say? I'm going to go on YouTube, find a video of stretching and do it. And on YouTube, what do you hear? Push it against until you can't, you know, until you're screaming. If it's painful, it's working. Well, why does it have to be painful to be working? What I would say is take it easy. Because you're going to be this in the long run, there's no need from your first day to go all out, just to discover the next day that you're fully sore and you can't move, and then you have to wait for 2 weeks before you can do your next stretching session. So take it easy. First of all, start easy. Start 50%, start 60%, until you start feeling the discomfort. And then you can, there's going to be a period, so before you start stretching, your body is all like tense and has knots everywhere. There's going to be a period where you're going to do that until that tension within your body starts to naturally disperse. You won't feel that tension anymore. Once you feel like you've gotten past that stage, and that can be different for many people, then you can start implementing some actual stretching techniques that will get you deeper into the stretches that you want to get. So I'd say first tip, don't make it painful. If you make it painful, it goes against sustainability factor. You're not gonna be prone to be doing it for long, because it's a mind game. And even if you have the mental strength to go for long, if you make it too painful, chances are you're breaking things way too quickly, and it's not gonna be, you can't get injured. And, you know, and I've had that before. I'm quite good at pain tolerance. I've definitely had before where I've ripped something in my hamstring for 2 years, could not even bend up to my shins, because I was like, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna get it, and then boom, too quickly.
What's your opinion on dynamic versus static stretching? Yeah.
They're both good. They both have their place. Dynamic normally when you're cold. Static when you're warm. That doesn't mean people say when I'm cold, dynamic, therefore I do it at the beginning. It doesn't matter. Excuse me. Basically, anytime you feel cold, you gotta do dynamic first to feel warm, and that means, do you have to do dynamic every time? No, you don't. As long as you feel warm, you can jump onto the static straight away. So maybe, I don't know, maybe you've done some cardio session and you've run and your blood is going, everything is warm. You're warm. You don't need to do the dynamic one necessary. But when you jump into the static, there's going to be an activation period depending on which flexibility methods you're using and what your goals are within flexibility. So dynamic normally when you're cold, static when you're already warm.